No fancy intros today. We're just gonna go ahead and get this thing started here. Let me bring up the chat. Make sure all systems are go. There we go. Looking good here. Looking good. There we go. Excellent. Okay, so so shout out to the lovely and talented Devin for bringing this to my attention. It's actually an article that she brought attention to, and incidentally enough, they're actually talking about it today live on Law and Crime. So we're going to go through the article, then we're going to start the video on Law and Crime. It's live right now. But I'm very, very fortunate. I got lucky. I'm actually going to start it right where the relevant parts are, right where he's talking about the relevant parts of the case, in terms of what we're talking about here. So we'll go to that here in just a second. So the article on Yahoo. Let's go ahead and go here. So the article, the title of the article is "Search of Sean Diddy Combs' Cell Uncovers Witness Tampering Plot. Prosecutors allege." This actually dropped. Looks like this dropped yesterday. This is late yesterday. So let me go ahead and read this. It says, evidence found in Sean Diddy Combs' cell suggests that he has influenced a witness in his New York sex trafficking and racketeering case and is trying to blackmail others, prosecutors allege. They say that he has sought to avoid federal detection by using three-way calls and other inmates' phone access codes. So right off the bat, he is still using his money to influence, right? Like the inmates are not, they're not going to be incentivized or motivated to give Diddy their passcodes, their phone codes, unless of course he offers them something in return, like money on their books, right? My guess is that he probably offered to put money on the books of several, if not all of the inmates, and they're like, "Well, yeah, this is Diddy. I'll have him get that, taken care of." Anyway, in a motion filed Friday, federal prosecutors say Combs was using secretive methods to contact outsiders from jail, and evidence gathered shows, quote, the clear inference that the defendant's goal is to blackmail victims and witnesses either into silence or to provide testimony helpful to his defense, an allegation that is more seen often in mob trials or Mexican mafia-style cases. It continues, but in a motion filed Monday, the music mogul's lawyers contend that what investigators actually seized from his Metropolitan Detention Center cell in Brooklyn was, quote, attorney-client privilege material, including handwritten notes by Combs. Quote, this search and seizure are in violation of Mr. Combs' 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment rights, his attorneys wrote. The targeted seizure of a pretrial detainee's work product and privileged materials created in preparation for trial is outrageous government conduct amounting to a substantive due process violation. The attorneys learned that the notes were seized from Combs' cell only when prosecutors filed a motion 30 minutes before midnight Friday, citing them as evidence opposing his release, his attorneys wrote. In a new filing Monday, prosecutors said that they had not seen anything from a legal file in his cell and had turned over photographs agents took of the items in the cell to a, quote, filter team to determine if there was anything privileged that should remain private. The team redacted anything that appeared to be privileged and then gave the information to prosecutors. So it appears that they're trying to shore their end up as well. And again, I'm no legal expert. I'm just the average layperson, just like you guys, just take an interest in the case. But that's what it sounds like to me. Continues, the battling motions came as a federal judge is slated again this week, which is today, to decide whether Combs, who has been behind bars since his September arrest, should be granted $50 million bail and released to house detention. Like, honestly, when is Diddy going to understand that he is never getting out of jail? Like, seriously. Like, this is like the 4th or 5th time they have tried to get him released. And now they raid his cell and find out that he is so let me get this straight. Okay? And this is where Diddy is not doing himself any favors. And I can promise you his attorneys are probably on his ass about this. Every time they appear to make a little bit of progress, Diddy does something to sabotage their progress, right? This has happened 2 or 3 times. This is the latest time. They're going to request a federal judge another hearing to try to get him out of there. Oh, look what we found. We found a hit list, basically a hit list in Diddy's cell. So the judge is going to be like, okay, so you're telling me that you want us to grant you a $50 million bail and all the security to make sure you don't tamper and influence, but in jail where you have no resources, no internet, no cell phone, no nothing, you are still influencing witnesses. You are still tampering with witnesses. He is definitely, dude, I would be shocked. I would be absolutely shocked if the judge, look, I don't think the judge was going to give him bail anyway, but this, to me, essentially puts the nail in the coffin. Like, what are we doing, Sean? What are we doing? It continues. Combs has pleaded not guilty to charges of sex trafficking, racketeering, and transportation to engage in prostitution. Combs and his associates are accused of luring female victims, often under the pretense of a romantic relationship, and allegedly using force, threats of force, coercion, and drugs to get them to engage in sex acts with male prostitutes and what Combs referred to as, quote, freak-offs. Federal prosecutors reiterated their position to Combs being granted bail to the judge on Friday, alleging Combs attempted to tamper with witnesses and influence potential jurors from his prison cell using his family members, and said they feared that his behavior would worsen out of custody. Guys, that literally just came out of my mouth. I hadn't even read this yet. But again, that appears to be the mindset of the prosecutors and the judge. If this dude is still out here, is still out here tampering with jurors and intimidating witnesses, or intimidating witnesses and tampering with a potential jury pool from a jail cell, then what the hell is he going to do in his palatial, $60 zillion mansion? According to prosecutors, Combs' notes were recovered from the, quote, defendant's cell during pre-planned nationwide sweep of the BOP facilities. Naima Rahmani, a former federal prosecutor, said there's a reason prosecutors believe Combs is obstructing justice from prison, similar to an argument they made during a previous bail hearing, and there's a good chance the judge doesn't toss out the evidence seized. Okay, this is just a bunch of legal mumbo jumbo. Not really. Yeah, it's just a bunch of legal mumbo jumbo at this point. So let's go to the law and crime video here. I'm going to start it. I'm actually going to start it right where he sort of gives us a summary as to what is going on. Oh, sorry about that. Let me change the sound. Hashtag we do it live. There we go.
If you have been following us here on Law and Crime, you've been following us on Sidebar, you know that the feds actually raided the Metropolitan Detention Center where Sean Combs is currently housed. They were it was a pre-planned sweep. They were looking for contraband. And what the prosecutor said is during the course of this sweep, they looked into Sean Combs' jail cell. And there was an investigator that was part of the Bureau of Prisons that was looking into things. And they write, the prosecutors write in their filing, on the defendant's bunk, Investigator 1 found the following items: manila folder marked legal, a notebook labeled, and that's actually redacted, an address book, personal effects, and talking about not that they just took out materials and looked at everything, but took photos of it, sent it to a filter team sent it to the prosecutors. That's my understanding. Safa, I'll give you an opportunity to respond to what you think of the defense's argument and the prosecution's response. But I guess the bigger question is, what could happen from this hearing? What's the best case scenario for Sean Combs here?
Life in prison?
I mean, the best case scenario for Mr. Combs.
The best case scenario for Diddy Combs is the death penalty.
Combs is that there's some sanctions imposed against the government with respect to the evidence that was allegedly obtained in this case. Those documents, those being suppressed out of the case. And I'm not sure, but we may even be having a conversation about dismissal later down the line. But I don't generally really think that that's going to be the case here. But some sanctions imposed on the prosecution team, removal of those prosecutors as well could be a possibility. So there's a number of things that the judge could determine to do going forward.
So again, as I said, I'm going to provide updates about what's happening in that court. We're also taking your questions. We have a question from V on YouTube. Do we know what was found in the Diddy jail cell sweep? So as I just mentioned, they found this manila folder marked legal, a notebook labeled, and it's actually redacted, an address book, and then personal effects. But as they said, the prosecutors, it was more with respect to business interest and family, and it doesn't seem to be attorney work product or privileged conversations. But we'll see. We'll see what the arguments are in court. We also have an update from court. So Sean Combs just walked in from his holding cell in the Metropolitan Detention.
By the way, his attorney requests that from here on out, Diddy not be shackled in the courtroom, and the judge granted him granted that motion.
Detention center. He's wearing that tan jumpsuit that he was wearing at his last hearing. He is walking fine, so he seems to be walking okay. He hugged his lawyers, sat down.
I would too.
And now he's just waiting for Judge Subramanian. By the way, I have to let everybody know, we weren't planning for this hearing. We were actually planning on going live on Friday because there's going to be an issue of bail. And Mauricio, you mentioned it before. That's a more tricky argument for Sean Combs because prosecutors just came forward and said he is obstructing justice from jail. He's having these three-way phone calls. He is taking other inmates' phone privileges to contact people that are not on his contact list. That he is devising this scheme to use third parties to reach out to witnesses in the case. There was also this allegation that he is orchestrating a social media campaign, not just to help his public image, but to potentially taint a future jury pool. His son took over his Instagram and has been posting positive videos of his father. But then they also, as we know, as we reported on Sidebar, the show that I host, that he actually orchestrated this happy birthday message with him and his family. They're literally wishing him a happy birthday. You hear him on the other end. He's speaking from jail. So that seems to be the trickier conversation. We weren't planning for this hearing, but what are your thoughts on the idea of Sean Combs getting let out of jail?
I doubt it's going to happen. He's not helping himself.
Nope.
This is not Diddy runs the city like he did before.
No.
You know, this is you're in prison.
Yep.
You're in jail, federally indicted. You had a couple machine guns with altered serial numbers at your house, like a real gangster. When a judge is thinking about whether or not he's going to let you out, he's going to take everything into consideration, including the actions that you're taking right now. I think that someone like him doesn't really understand how close they're looking. I mean, they're literally taking pictures of his legal pads. That's crazy. So they're going to listen to every single thing that you say to every single person, and then get ready for the jailhouse snitches.
Here we go.
Here for sure.
Here we
There's
go.
Gonna be the guy that says that he was drinking jailhouse wine and spontaneously blurted out, I did.
Toilet wine.
That's every single high-profile case. I totally think that that's going to happen. I did. That's every single high-profile case. I totally think that that's going to happen. I don't think that he's going to get a bond simply because nothing's changed. So for a judge to, go back on his ruling, especially with a guy like him, he gets out and he starts making mistakes and does something bad, the judge is going to look bad.
Yeah, by the way, the standard is much lower. We're not talking about did he have three-way phone calls and obstruct justice to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. It's just the standard of did he meet to get pretrial release, to get bail, and it doesn't seem, unless they can put forward a really compelling argument by the defense, that he's going to be able to justify that if these allegations are taken as true by the court. Okay, some questions. Question from Andy on X. Is he shackled? No, he is not shackled because the defense won that motion to have him unshackled for this proceeding and maybe presumably for future proceedings. Here's a question for you, Safa. This is a question from Erica Potter Childs on YouTube. How does an inmate have personal space rights? Now the attorney-client privilege, I understand, but anything else is fair game in jail. So I guess the question would be,
I agree, man.
What is a criminal defendant's Fourth Amendment rights in jail against unreasonable search and seizure?
There you go.
Well, those Fourth Amendment rights to search and seizure are certainly limited when a person is incarcerated.
There you go.
But the thing is this, at the end of the day, Mr. Combs, he's facing these accusations. He has an attorney. He's always protected by that attorney-client privilege. The search and seizure rights don't supersede his ability to have that attorney-client privilege that's been granted to him by the Constitution. So there's a fine line here. Not only that, but if you've got an allegation that the government is going in doing this prison sweep, generally speaking, those things are done to prevent contraband and other things to have been found or to be in possession of those things, or to prevent individuals from being in possession of those things. That doesn't appear to be the case here. Legal documents, legal pads, notebooks don't appear to be contraband. They're not drugs. They're not going to harm anybody. So that's a very fine line in question between whether or not, those rights have been violated and so on and so forth.
And by the way, the government addressed that in their filing. They said, although pretrial detainees like the defendant retain some Fourth Amendment protections, that does not mean that those rights are not subject to restrictions and limitations. Even when a prison regulation impinges on inmates' constitutional rights, that regulation is valid if it's reasonably related to legitimate penological interests, meaning about the prison safety and things like that. Although pretrial detainees may have some residual privacy interests that are protected by the Fourth Amendment, courts must weigh those interests against the requirements of preservation of institutional security and order, meaning got to weigh that against what's happening in the prison. All right, we got an update from court. Still waiting for the judge. Sean Combs is chatting with his lawyer, Anthony Rico, and he's seated to his left in a bow tie. Here's a question from Sindonia12 from YouTube. How is Diddy able to consistently break protocol and take the phone time of fellow inmates?
I'm telling you, I think he bought them off. I think he is bribing the inmates.
That's a good question for you, Mauricio, right? I did a sidebar on this. Is it common that you see a criminal defendant maybe taking the phone privileges of another inmate? Now, it's not alleged that he did it by force and threatened them.
No.
There was an allegation that these other inmates were getting paid for their phone privileges.
Told you.
What do you take away from that?
I'm pretty sure that they probably are, but imagine he's probably got a bunch of fanboys in there. He's P. Diddy, he's famous. I'm sure I read an article that people are competing to make his bed and things of that nature. I don't know if that's true or not, but yeah, I'm pretty sure people are tripping over themselves to assist him because they figure out maybe, he can give me money or he can, he can produce my next album. For the inmates that wish to be rappers, which I'm sure there's a bunch in there.
Of course.
But listen, regarding Fourth Amendment, I mean, when you're locked up, that's somewhere where they do routine cavity searches. So I don't understand what people think that they have privacy rights.
Yeah.
When you're incarcerated.
Thank you.
They could literally, give you a cavity search.
You're incarcerated.
It doesn't get more intrusive than that. So I always counsel my clients, expect zero privacy. They will listen to everything. They will look through everything. They will read everything.
Thank you. There you go.
The higher profile the case, the more they're going to care. And this is, I just don't understand. Like, if it's a balancing test with the prosecution, what did you get out of this? And is it worth the bad press? Because this is bad press for the prosecution. I mean, I don't think it spins well for them that they're going through all this.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter.
Of legal pads,
doesn't matter.
Things of that nature. In my opinion,
it might look bad on the prosecution, but it looks worse on Diddy. That's what it is. Dude, they found a hit list. That's what happened.
It doesn't look good for the prosecution.
It doesn't look good for the prosecution in the public eye, but it looks very, very good for the prosecution in the courtroom. And as we all know, cases are tried in courtrooms, not in the public.
Before I go to you, Safa, on an interesting legal question, Mauricio, I have arguably the most important question that we have. This is for you. It's about the wine in the jail. How do inmates make wine in jail? Toilet
wine. They take fruit and they ferment it.
Mauricio, that seems to be the question that is dominating our YouTube.
Not that I would know about that. I know about toilet wine. I know about steak cake. I know about all that stuff.
They get like fruit or anything. They stick it in a bag with water and then they put it somewhere.
Yep.
And let it, ferment.
Yep.
And then eventually that's how you get the jailhouse hooch or whatever they call it. And they drink it and it gets you wasted. It's popular. And it always goes in conjunction with the jailhouse
snitch. Yeah.
The jailhouse snitch always says he was drunk on wine when he spontaneously blurted out, "I did it."
It's Food Network style. All right, let me ask you this, Saf. I want to read you. This is from the Sean Combs defense filing, one of their latest filings. I want to read you where they talk about, they say these notes are obviously privileged. I'm going to read you parts of it. Of the 19 pages provided to counsel, 11 pages are Combs' notes to and with his lawyers. These notes reflect actual conversations with his attorneys concerning aspects of his trial preparation and his efforts to be released on bail. The notes refer to defense counsel by name, include discussions of defense experts. And
Devin in the chat says, this tells me that there is worse yet to come out on this case. Yeah, I totally agree. Man.
Witnesses discuss cross-examination and credibility of witnesses and overall defense strategy. Mr. Combs' handwritten notes covering legal strategy are now in the hands of the trial prosecutors, who hope to take advantage of the breach they committed to better prepare for the May 2025 trial, bring new charges, and argue for Mr. Combs' detention. And then they go on a little bit later to say if the warning legal on that manila folder wasn't enough, the notes are obviously legal materials that he discusses with his lawyer. They repeatedly refer to his lawyers by name. On the 14th, and then a lot of this is actually redacted, but they said that this is clear wrongdoing. The notes are replete with discussions of legal strategy. They all should have been obvious to everyone who looked at these notes, including Investigator 1, who is that investigator from the Bureau of Prisons, and the Taint team and the trial team. How does the prosecution argue against that?
Well, it's going to be pretty tough. I mean, they've got to get around a number of hurdles, essentially. And to Mr. Padillo's point, this is bad press for them. You know, they have to get around how they got into that manila folder that is clearly marked legal.
That's actually very bad. But Devin says they obviously had probable cause. Someone had to say, hey, Diddy is reaching out to me this way, so they went in there to get proof. I totally agree, man. I think somebody called up the prosecutor. I think somebody called the prosecutor's office and said, hey, look, man, like these people, like, dude, Diddy's people, even though he's in jail, his people are still getting to me. And so they were like, okay, there's got to be some sort of list. And then of course, they're listening in on phone calls, three-way calls, all that stuff. Yeah.
That's number one. Number two, then we have to go to the point of once somebody is taking photos of this, it's clearly legal material. It's clearly work product. How do we get around, saying that this is okay? And I think that's really a better question for the defense. I hate when prosecutors try to say, well, that's not privileged or that's not Brady material, when in fact it's up to the defense and the defendant to decide what's Brady material and what's important to us. Because
ask the defense. Because we're going to leave it up to the defense what they want you to see and what they don't want you to see in jail. Sorry, I don't care. I disagree.
We are the ones that are crafting and framing our defense. They're not in any better position.
You know what this is, guys? Do you know what Diddy's team is doing? This is like you going through your girlfriend's phone, finding out she's cheating, but she gets mad at you for going through her phone. Right? What are you doing looking at my phone? Doesn't matter. You're fucking cheating. And so the legal system allows let's say if this was a legal case, the legal system essentially allows the girlfriend to be not exonerated, but if the boyfriend is using the reason why I know she's cheating on me is because this dude is sending her dick pics. They talked about having sex the other night, right? And if I'm in front of those two people and the guy tells me, well, look, I mean, I'm seeing dick pics that they're talking about having sex. This is why I know she's cheating on me. But then she said, but then somebody else says, well, listen, he wasn't supposed to go through her phone. That was privileged information. What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to say now? Since he wasn't supposed to go through the phone, since he found out about the cheating in an illegal way, that means that she's not cheating. No, that's not what that means. That means she's still cheated. You just can't verbally use the proof to prove it. You have to prove it in other ways. That's exactly what has happened with the prosecution. It appears that they have allegedly obtained this in a I don't want to say illegal, but it sounds like they bent a lot of rules here, and Diddy's team is acting like the girlfriend. Well, okay, you found that I was cheating on me, but you found out illegally. That's what this is. To
tell us what that is. So it's going to be interesting to see how they get around this. Of course, the argument that it's not confidential, it's privileged. Maybe they will disclose or say that some of this information had initially been disclosed in their disclosures, but it'll be interesting to see where they go.
Little update from court. So Sean Combs' lawyer, Mark Agnifilo, he said this to the court, we expect Alexandra Shapiro to arrive at any moment from the Second Circuit. This is another one of Sean Combs' lawyers. I have Sean Love Combs to my left. The judge said, fine, what are you seeking? Agnifilo, we want to know how his notes with lawyers came into their possession. We're going to continue to update. We're going to continue to take your questions on this.
Wow.
One question
this will be huge.
Is how much can the prosecution rely on, well, look, this was the Bureau of Prisons who did this. It wasn't us. And also went through a filter team, there's something in their filing that I want to read you too, where they say, even if there was inadvertent disclosure of privileged material to the prosecution team, that alone does not suggest that a defendant's constitutional rights were violated.
Thank you.
Or that a defendant is entitled to relief.
Good.
And they cite a case that says this after-the-fact notice of potentially privileged documents did not render the government's earlier search unreasonable. The government's review need only be reasonable, not perfect.
Listen, if you have DOJ pointing the finger at the Bureau of Prisons and the Bureau of Prisons pointing the finger at the DOJ, that's like a disaster.
Yeah,
I don't even understand.
He's right about that.
What they thought they were going to accomplish. At the end of the day, it's the government. You're incarcerated. I've never even heard of people that work in the prison taking the steps to proactively alert prosecutors of things that they found in cells. They usually don't do that. Like they're going to look for drugs.
Yes, but this is Diddy we're talking about. This is not not the typical case. And they're looking for drugs and shanks and contraband. Well, guess what? Diddy had contraband. It just wasn't harmful to people, at least not yet.
Contraband, things that are dangerous. They're not going to be taking pictures and then, giving it over to the prosecution. It's really bad if they're pointing fingers at each other at this point and at this early stage in the game. Like they're really they're really stepping all over everywhere with muddy boots.
Safa, we have an update from court. Wanted to ask you about. So Combs' lawyer, Mark Agnifilo, says he has an expectation of privacy in his legal notes. The judge said this occurred during a Bureau of Prisons sweep of the jail, but you're saying it was a pretext? Yes, 19 pages of the notes were given from the taint team to them. Mark Agnifilo says, we know enough to make out a constitutional violation, but we need to know more detail about the failures. We haven't been able to test their explanation. We need the surveillance video of the search. Two things I take away from that. One, they basically are suggesting that this sweep by, even though the government has said this was a pre-planned sweep of the jail,
I don't believe that.
There might be more to it, they're saying. It was a pretext. But B, I don't know if they're even asking for some sort of relief right now, but for more information, almost like an investigation into what happened. What do you take away from that back and forth?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, to the first point, I'm a little skeptical. While this may have been a pretextual search,
yeah, I don't buy that either.
In this
Look, I don't buy that. I think the government's lying about that, but oh well, I don't give a shit. Look, man, cops, listen, cops can lie to you when you're in custody. Cops can lie to you to get information out of you.
Of this search was prior to Mr. Combs being taken into custody. Everybody knows that Mr. Combs has been under investigation since last year. And I would highly anticipate that the government knew that at some point he would be coming into custody later this year or at this point in time.
Yeah, Ghost 1978 says when you receive or send a letter, they check it for anything wrong. Yeah, exactly.
Now, so I would continue to challenge that. At what point when was that search determined that it was going to take place, or when was it scheduled? And then to your second point, the expectation and things of that nature, again, it's going to be really interesting here, how much they think that they can get around that. So.
No, let's talk about that. And by the way, another quick question. This is a question from Tony on YouTube. Is bond going to be discussed today? I don't believe so.
No, that's Friday.
Set for Friday.
Yeah.
But going back to, this is the filing from Sean Combs' legal counsel. Mauricio, they write, the Bureau of Prisons sweep was purportedly related to removing contraband at the facility. And by the way, this was reported that they found homemade weapons, they found electronics.
Yeah.
They found, drugs.
Of course.
This was all not about Sean Combs.
Sure, but yeah, that's what happens.
But it says, yet Investigator 1 apparently used this sweep as a pretext to conduct a targeted seizure of Mr. Combs' handwritten notes about conversations with his lawyers. Tellingly, Investigator 1 did not report that he had identified and confiscated Sean Combs' notes of conversations with his lawyer to supervisors of the multi-agency law enforcement operation. He went straight to the prosecution team.
Wow.
What do you make of that, Mauricio?
Yeah, that looks bad.
If you work for the...
It looks bad, but guess what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Look, I don't care. I don't care, man. Again, I'll make this comparison. If you and a group of if you were trying to convince a group of people that your girlfriend had been cheating on you, and you produce evidence of such, pictures, text messages, blah, 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 that confirms that she's cheating. They're talking about having sex, meeting up, you blew your load in my face, I want more, blah, 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 blah. But then the girl says, well, you shouldn't have checked my phone. That's not allowed. You're not going to convince that group of people that she didn't cheat. You can say, well, listen, disregard what you just saw or heard. No, they're not going to disregard what they just heard. It doesn't matter. And again, this is how people get out of stuff like this, is with technicalities like this. Right? They look for one weak link in the chain of command. Well, he didn't dot his I or cross his T, or he didn't exactly say this or do that, so the case is going to be thrown out. I don't think the judge is going to do that. I think the judge, here's what I think the judge is going to do. I think the judge is going to reprimand the prosecution in some way. I don't know what she can do. I don't really know how she would do it. Maybe she gives him a stern talking to, maybe she gives him a slap on the wrist. But I think that they're going to use that. Even if they can't use it as evidence in the trial, that is valuable information.
The BOP and you're doing a sweep looking for contraband and cell phones, and all of a sudden you're taking pictures of a legal pad. The people that work with you are going to be like, hey, what are you doing? That's completely targeted. That goes against how they operate. These sweeps are done. They're voluminous. It's work for them, and they got to get it done. For you to take the time to stop and start taking pictures of legal pads and going through his things, and then in addition to that, now Investigator 1 is taking the material that he photographed, where it's not even the norm to do so, to the prosecution.
Yeah,
is clearly indicative that it was a target. And that Investigator 1.
Okay, so it was a target. So it was a target. So somebody got a call from the prosecutor and said, "Hey, somebody just called us. Somebody just called me, and it's one of Diddy's people, right?" So the prosecution probably gets on the phone with the jail cell people. "Hey, look, go sweep Diddy's cell and tell me what you find. Is it legal? Probably not. I don't give a shit. Proof is proof."
One had an agenda. He went in.
Yep, and that agenda was to uncover witness tampering, jury tampering, witness tampering, and intimidation. That to me is a worthwhile agenda. Agenda is it's fine. This guy's a criminal defense attorney, so that's the way he's going to word this. But not all agendas are bad. Okay. They sweep my cell because there's an agenda. Yeah, the agenda is to lock up pedophiles and sick fucks like you. That's the agenda.
There to take pictures, and it's obvious. I mean, if he wants to argue that he was part of a team and he was looking for
it was totally targeted.
So then why did you stop and take all this time?
Because he was targeted. He was targeted, and I don't give a shit.
Do this in-depth search of Diddy's legal pads and legal materials. Doesn't make sense.
I'm curious to see the prosecution.
No, it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. This was targeted, and I'm okay with that.
Prosecution's response, but right now it's still based on the defense counsel's argument to the court. And to give everybody an update about what's happening in that court, and Saf, I'll throw this to you for your reaction about what's happening. So Mark Agnifilo, again, Sean Combs' lawyer. We need the communications of Investigator 1. We need to know the role of the U.S. Attorney's Office on what should be in photographs. The search was for drugs and guns and cell phones, but these are Combs' legal files. And then the judge said, just keep it on the logistics. Mark Agnifilo says, we're not sure if it was Investigator 1 who was the one doing the search, who interviewed Mr. Combs, who went to the area where his legal papers were. Once we know that, we could have a Fifth Amendment transgression.
Oh, wow.
Safa.
Oh, boy.
Absolutely. Right now what the defense is doing is they're trying to get a hold and a grasp of exactly who launched this investigation, why these photos were taken, why this correspondence happened between Investigator 1 and the U.S. Attorney's Office. And a lot of these questions remain to be foreseen until we have a hearing on the issue. And right now, the defense is seeking a hearing on that issue. So we haven't gotten to that specific hearing as of yet, although they're laying the framework for why that should be taking place.
Yeah, attention span says it makes perfect sense, but if they pull too much, quote, bullshit, this is how cases get tossed, they need to be by the book. No, I agree.
And they're very valid questions.
I think the prosecution was going to step over the line maybe once. I think they said, okay, we're going to step over the line once, hopefully, because this case is not going to be dismissed based on that. No one's dismissing this case based on that. However, if this keeps happening, if stuff like this keeps happening, the judge might not have any choice but to dismiss the case. So I agree with you, attention span. I think the U.S. attorney said, okay, we're going to break some rules here. We're going to get a slap on the wrist. We're going to get reprimanded by the judge, but guess what? We now know what's really going on. I think that this is a calculated risk by the prosecution. They say, "Hey, look, we're going to take some media scrutiny. The public opinion it's going to be a bad publicity, but the course remains the same. We need to keep this guy behind bars." Dr. B84 with the $10 super chat says, "This case is wild as fuck." You are not kidding.
That is created with respect to an investigation must be turned over to the defense, whether it's text messages that a law enforcement officer has created that goes over to the district attorney's office or the U.S. attorney's office, or any sort of documentation, photo, recording, any and everything under the sun has to be turned over to the defense. And so there's definitely a question here as to whether or not that actually happened. What was the motive behind Investigator number 1 taking these photos, and why they got specifically directly to the prosecution team?
I have quite an update from court, and Mauricio, I'm going to ask you your response.
Here we go.
Sean Combs' lawyer says, we may ask for dismissal of the indictment.
Told you.
Or for the recusal of the prosecution
Told you.
team. Judge Subramanian writes, Subramanian said, they used 2 portions in responding on bail, and you want me not to consider those? They need to hand over the notes.
Ooh! Whoa! Let's run that back. Let's run that back.
Subramanian said, they used 2 portions in responding on bail, and you want me not to consider those? They need to hand over the notes. Wow. So,
dude, that's
would
big.
there be a scenario where Sean Combs' indictment could be thrown out, or the prosecution team has to recuse themselves, assuming the worst, assuming this is a violation of Sean Combs' constitutional rights? What do you think?
I mean, listen, the defense is always going to ask for the star, the moons, and everything. That's not going to happen. They're not going to dismiss anything,
No.
and they're not going to. They're probably not going to, kick the prosecutors off. But that's the correct thing to ask for. You know what I mean? Like, there's other sanctions that are not as drastic. This could end up with the judge giving the prosecution a lecture.
There you go. What did I tell you? What did I tell you? I think that's what's going to happen. I think. Look, man, I think the prosecution and the judge, I think they're on board. Guys, listen, man. Diddy is so obviously guilty. I'm sorry. He's guilty. He did it. Okay, are there 1 or 2 elements that might not be 100% true? Absolutely. Are there some people out there looking for this as like a money or cash grab? You better believe it. But this man is 1,000% guilty. There's a reason why hundreds of people came forward. Okay? They didn't all just get together and make up this story to collude against Diddy. Nah, man. This shit is, dude, and all the stories sound the same. They sound the same or similar. They sound the same or similar. So I think the judge is going to, I think the judge and the prosecution, I think they're dancing right now, but nobody knows it. They probably suspect it. So the prosecution is going to say, that was very wrong of you, Mr. Prosecutor. And if you do it again, you're going to blah, 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 recuse yourself and disbar, blah, 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 blah. And I think that's what's going to happen.
Do it again, or
there you go.
It's probably going to end up, I don't see the judge in this case doing something as drastic as what the defense is asking for, but he may do something. He may, give him a talking to.
And by the way, Safa, we have to be clear that this is not the first time Sean Combs' defense counsel has raised allegations of misconduct by the government. There was a whole series of back and forth and motions that the government
that's just to create reasonable doubt. Of course they're going to go after the prosecution. Dude, these people know this man is guilty. Come on.
Specifically, the Department of Homeland Security had been leaked.
Attention Span says this is going to be their downfall. Prosecute the case on its merits. I think he's guilty as fuck. Now, I agree with that. I don't think they had to raid his jail cell to get this targeted, this hit list he's got. I don't think they had to do that to put him in jail. I think he's already guilty.
Leaking information to the media. They talked about leaking the 2016
Ken Rose with the $2 super chat. Appreciate that very much. Let's continue.
Videotape of Sean Combs purportedly beating Cassandra Ventura in that hotel hallway. They said that law enforcement agents were making inappropriate comments to the media, and the judge actually instituted a gag order. Even made a comment, Judge Subramanian, that if it's true some of these comments were being made, it's totally improper. Now, here's an update, too, because Mark Agnifilo told the court, we don't know what the team has. We want to know, and we want the material back while this is pending. We cannot waive his attorney-client privilege. We have to be direct or aggressive. So it just seems, and by the way, so it seems to me, Safa, the fact that this hearing is happening, the judge is at least open to what the defense is saying.
Absolutely. And the judge should be, all of these things are issues that could ultimately come back on appeal. So it's best to have a thorough, hearing on the issue, making sure that everybody's crossing their T's and dotting their I's so that we don't have issues for appeal. And that could be an issue if the defense doesn't raise it. And then it could ultimately lead to ineffective assistance of counsel. I think the defense team is being very thorough right now. I think they are being ambitious, but definitely very thorough right now with addressing each and every point that they need to address to ensure that Mr. Combs gets a fair trial to the best of their ability.
By the way, we're showing everybody these courtroom sketches. You'll see there's multiple judges because this case... the defense is not looking for a fair trial. They're looking for a dismissal because if they get a fair trial, they know their client's cooked. Has been in front of multiple judges before. It's now in front of Judge Arun Subramanian. By the way, we're taking your questions, not just about the hearing. If you have questions about the overall case, we'll take them too, which actually brings me to a question from B. Denoshi on YouTube. I'll throw this to you, Mauricio. How long will this case take, and how is it going so far compared to how you may have expected? What do you think, Mauricio?
Oh, that's a good question.
I mean, I think it could take, I don't know, 6 months. Like, it's a high-profile case.
So
They
May,
got a
June,
lot of
July,
people
August,
on it,
September,
a lot of boots
October.
on the ground.
Wait, just to be clear, 6 months you think the trial, or you think in the trial, or how long? Because this is scheduled for May of 2025. What do you think?
Then it should go in May of 2025. I mean, I think that they have so many people working on this that they should be ready. And I'm pretty sure that the defense has a client that's itching to get out of there. So they're going to want to go. Now, I assume that there's voluminous evidence simply because if you can't get the machine guns with altered serial numbers out of your house, I'm pretty sure that your hard drives are chock full of bad information.
That's exactly
and videos
right.
and pictures.
There you go.
I'm sure that they got a lot to deal with, but I'm pretty sure if they give them a date.
Can you imagine? Oh my, dude, he is so cooked. Dude, if they've got pictures and videos, it's over.
In May of 2025, that they're probably going to be ready to go.
We have
They're
some
definitely gonna be
updates
ready.
in court. We now have the prosecution's response to what's been happening.
Oh, here we go.
Safa, so the Judge Subramanian, by the way, this is a live look outside that courthouse. No cameras allowed in the courtroom, but we're doing our best to update you about what's happening. So the judge says to the government, what happened here? Why were they taking photos of Mr. Combs' notebooks? AUSA Mary Christine Slavic says none of the prosecutors had contact with them. The judge said, but Investigator 1 was monitoring Mr. Combs' communications in and out. The judge said, is this a Fourth Amendment violation?
There you go.
AUSA Slavic, so again, this is the prosecutor. The BOP investigator works for the BOP, the Bureau of Prisons.
Right.
He's focused on safety, and if the defendant is in compliance
The hardest
with BOP
knockout in
rules,
boxing
he's not.
history.
If it is true that BOP gave us the info, what do you make of that back and forth, Safa?
It doesn't really answer the question, in my opinion. And here's the thing. The Bureau of Prisons, the federal government, the U.S. Attorney's Office, Department of Homeland Security, and FBI, they are all law enforcement. They are all the government. The prosecution teams are imputed with knowing and being in possession of things that law enforcement is in possession of. And I know there's a question here with respect to the Bureau of Prisons, but it definitely does possibly raise that Fourth Amendment issue because, again, why are we taking photos of these documents? Why is Investigator 1 targeted with monitoring Mr. Combs' phone calls? Now, generally speaking, every inmate's phone calls, they're monitored.
Of course
there
they
are searches that are conducted all of the time. But this seems to be a little heightened, specifically because you're taking photos of paper. Paper doesn't appear to be a threat to the physical safety of any inmate in the jail.
You don't know that.
Not only that, but it seems that there's more attention that's paid to Mr. Combs as things continue to progress. And it's very common that the prosecution team will monitor or will have those phone calls pulled. But here there seems to be just a number of things. And based on the totality of the circumstances, there's a significant red flag that's going off.
Okay, Mauricio, I'm going to go to you with a new update from court. So the prosecutor says none of the prosecution team were aware that Investigator 1 was going to be part of this sweep.
That's cap.
The judge said, when did you become aware that photos had been taken of Mr. Combs' notes?
I think the prosecution, I think they're just going to lie and say, we didn't know. He just gave it to us. And I think the prosecution is lying, but...
The prosecutor responds, after the sweep. The judge said, but before the grand jury subpoena? Now, the reason that is interesting, and I believe what they're talking about, is if you go back to the government's filing, they said as part of that investigation, the government has sent grand jury subpoenas and document requests to the Bureau of Prisons for the defendant's monitored communications, including calls and emails. And then it says, from those materials, the government has learned that the defendant has persisted in engaging in obstructive conduct since he entered BOP custody. We talked about that before. Mauricio, your reaction?
So they're basically saying that they're subpoenaing documents, but they're sending their investigator to get what they subpoenaed because they don't want to wait for the subpoena. Listen, it's making them look ridiculous.
Yeah.
The longer that we talk in this particular broadcast,
Oh, boy.
the worse it's going for them. What you just said really makes them look bad. You guys didn't even know where Investigator 1 was, but then again, you took what Investigator 1 gave you and you used it.
Oh, boy.
Like,
Yeah,
I
that
don't
looks
know.
bad.
It seems like
That looks
no
bad,
one wants
man.
to take responsibility for this PR nightmare that they created themselves. And at the end of the day, what did they get? And also, before I forget, they're taking pictures of a legal pad. That's kind of already like, it's a legal pad. Like, people would say you should have, the thought that maybe there could be some writings or notes regarding your case on a legal pad. So that's something else that could be looked at. But as far as I'm concerned, a prosecutor saying that they didn't know that investigator one, that it doesn't seem true at all.
Well, there is a response where, again, the prosecution is saying it seems the defense is not being totally transparent because here's another update from court. The judge said to the prosecution, so there's nothing else? The AUSA Slavic, the prosecutor, said, Mr. Agnifilo says the defense team does not know what the Taint team has, but we made a production to them last night of everything, not just the 19 pages that were passed to the case team. So Safa, they're basically saying that, yeah, defense is saying they want to know everything that was taken. They want to know everything. We told them everything that was taken or everything that was produced.
You may have finally disclosed it because you knew that this hearing was coming forward today, but this should have been done long ago.
Yeah.
Not only that, but I think at this point, what's important is to get investigator one into that courtroom, put investigator one on the stand to make a determination as to how he was directed to get these documents, who he spoke to, how he came to the decision to photograph those documents, and so on and so forth. So I really think that's where we are, is having investigator one come on the stand. That's going to be the answer to all of our questions.
I have a question from Susan LeBlanc on YouTube. So no cameras through the whole court process? Unfortunately, no. We do not allow cameras in federal court, New York federal court. I could talk forever about how I think that's a mistake. I think there should be cameras in the Supreme Court as part of transparency. I think it's better for the public to see it. We get to see the evidence ourselves. No more rumors, no more speculation. It's a good thing to see the judicial process play out, but unfortunately, I am just a host on Law and Crime. I am not the chief judge anyway.
I just work here.
Yet. We'll see where this goes. Anyway, we got an update from court. Prosecutor says, these materials were obtained as part of the government's covert ongoing...
Yeah, Ghost 1978 it says, so if I write plans to escape with my lawyer's help, they can't take the paperwork or make pictures? Yeah, right. That's essentially what they're saying, but that's why I think they're providing context.
Grand jury investigation. The judge responded, is it standard procedure to photograph notebooks rather than take them so it could be known they were taken? Prosecutor said, I don't know. Who wants to answer that one?
Just a really shoddy investigation.
Yeah, this is
again,
bad.
And to Mr. Padilla's point earlier, is if you issued grand jury subpoenas, then why do you have to have investigator one go in and photograph specifically what you seem to be looking for? It doesn't make sense. It's really shoddy. It's really fast and loose. I don't know.
CDL says they're gonna fuck this case up. I'm gonna tell you what, man. I don't think the case is going to... Look, they're not going to dismiss the case. They're not going to get the prosecution to recuse itself. But they got to play it squeaky clean. They got to play it squeaky clean. Listen, there's way too much evidence. There's way too much evidence in discovery for anything to be thrown out. They're not going... Dude, the judge is not about to dismiss this case because of the violation... Pardon me, of an inmate's Fourth Amendment rights, right? Okay, so you violated his you probably violated his constitutional rights, allegedly. That's not a reason. That's not a reason to dismiss the case. But if they keep going down this path, like CDL says, they're gonna fuck this case up. And the thing is they don't have to be doing this. There is no need. There is no need to be going in here and doing this. They have more than enough evidence to put Diddy away for 100 lifetimes. Why fuck it up now?
Let me ask you this, Mauricio. Let's say, for example, you tell me, could this affect what the government said they found in terms of obstruction? You know, we have the phone calls, we have these third-party calls, we know what Sean Combs has been doing behind jail, and this is further evidence of obstruction. He shouldn't be allowed in. Is there anything that could happen today that could affect his chances of bail on Friday?
Maybe.
I don't think so. I think they're completely separate. One thing is whether or not he's a flight risk. One thing is whether he's a threat to the community, as a whole, and the other thing is the prosecutor.
I think if Diddy gets bail, we will never see him again. I think if he gets bail, I think he gets on a private jet, and I think he disappears. They cannot let this man out of prison, guys, or out of jail.
I don't understand how you say it's a covert grand jury investigation, but you started off saying that it was a random sweep. It's like, which is it? It can't be both.
Well, they could say it said we were continually investigating what he was doing behind prison. And look, this sweep happened. We didn't order the sweep. They ordered the sweep, and it just so happens during the course of the sweep, bada boom, this came up.
Yeah, that's shady.
Right. So the covert investigation was Investigator 1 in with everybody else that was conducting the random sweep, and then went straight to Diddy's cell to photograph. So that's targeted. That's the definition of targeted.
I want to read.
In my opinion.
That's fair.
I agree. I agree with them. They definitely targeted him.
So this is an update from court. The prosecutor said, "We are not required to notify the defense of our ongoing investigation of criminal conduct. We receive these materials in an appropriate channel. Whenever we get new information, if there's reason to believe there's privilege, it goes to the filter team." Safa, walk me through
That's why it went to the filter team.
If it goes through the filter team, is everything okay?
Absolutely not, because who determines what's appropriate with the filter team? You're asking the government and the police or law enforcement to police themselves. There's no outside check and balance, from a defense or from any other administrative board to say, yes, provide us with that documentation. We, as an outside, source or organization or agency, will then determine if it's appropriate, if it's confidential and privileged or anything like that. So essentially, it's the government trying to police themselves and cover up some.
I wouldn't be surprised if Diddy's defense team didn't do this. I wouldn't be surprised if Diddy's defense team paid a corrections officer to go in and take pictures of this stuff and then send it to the prosecutor so that they can then on the back end get the case dismissed on this fourth. I mean, what do they have to lose, right? What do they have to lose other than their bar license?
Things that they maybe inadvertently or targeted and wanted to get in possession, and it's now in their possession.
Well, I have another update from court on that. And by the way, if you have any questions about what's happening today, if you have questions about the case in general, please throw them on YouTube. We'll address them here on air, live look of the courthouse. So Mauricio, the Judge Subramanian, says if they were verbatim notes of his meetings with his lawyers, how would you know without asking the defense? And the prosecution responded, "Our filter team does a serious job. This investigation was covert. We had a lot of information before charges were brought." Thoughts?
Who is this filter team? Like, who are these people? Like,
here we go.
I have never worked in a case that had a filter team. Today was the first time I've even heard.
Yeah, me too. I've never heard of a filter team.
I'm assuming that it's prosecutors or people that work at the prosecutor's office. I don't know who they are, but I, as a defense attorney, don't trust them.
No,
they're probably
he's
part
right.
of the government.
He's right.
So I really don't understand why, if you just label them filter team, that they're not part of the government, part of the prosecution, and part of the problem, of the ongoing problem.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
I don't know why the prosecutor. This seems a little fishy to me. And you guys know me. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but this seems. Why would the prosecution do this? Like, this is This is as close to a slam dunk case as there is. They've got Diddy dead to rights. Like, he is guilty. 100% full stop. He's guilty. Why are you fucking this up? Like, why would you do that? It just doesn't make any sense to me. It's almost like the defense. It's almost as though the defense staged this whole thing, knowing that the prosecutors would jump at the chance to see what's on this list. And the prosecution took the bait, hook, line, and sinker. That's just my opinion.
Look in their last filing, if they give a description of who the filter team is. There is this interesting part.
Colonel says filtered team.
Practice in this district, the filter teams review segregated, potentially privileged materials as evidenced in the redactions contained in the photographs. This approach is eminently reasonable. Here, where the photographs related to the government's ongoing covert grand jury investigation, the government had no obligation to seek defense counsel's view of the privilege determinations made by the filter team. Saf, I'll give you an opportunity to respond to that.
Yeah, and I think I did review some of the documents earlier on the case, and I think that the filter team is a team that is assigned and works in the Bureau of Prisons, so they're determining whether or not it's confidential privilege.
That means it's the government.
Again, expecting the Bureau of Prisons or the government to police themselves, and there's a question there because it doesn't appear that any defense attorney has the ability to say, yes, this is attorney-client privilege, or even the judiciary or anything like that. So that's a significant question. It also brings to mind, and for example, when we have wiretap cases, and there's been a wiretap on a phone for maybe a year to 2 years, and they've been listening to our clients. But then when the client calls us as their defense attorney, the police themselves determine, oh, this is attorney-client privilege. Let me turn it down for 30 seconds, then pop back on to see if they're still talking to their attorney, and then let me hang up. So again, it's just really odd, really, in my opinion, inappropriate ways of monitoring these important correspondence. So
we have a question from YouTube. This is Pam from YouTube, excuse me. Mauricio, I'll throw this to you. How would anyone know if it's legal talk on that notebook or that it's him trying to get illegal messages out to others? Why would they go on faith with a high-profile criminal?
Ooh, good question.
Why would they go on faith with a high-profile criminal? Like, meaning justifying taking pictures and looking at it? Listen, at the end of the day, what did they think that they were going to get? Information regarding obstruction, or it seems to me that they already have them busted doing a bunch of incorrect things.
Thank you. Exactly. This was unnecessary.
Three-way calls.
Yeah, man.
Trying to activate social media to affect the jury pool. Like, if you got them cold busted on certain things, don't muddy the waters and do this ridiculousness. Because what are you going to have? You're going to have a day like today where you're in court trying to explain your tomfoolery to a federal judge. And it's not paying off dividends for them.
No, it's not.
So we are providing updates from court. I have a few more that we want to talk about. Safa, so apparently...
I think they... honestly, man, listen. And you guys got to understand, this is the Southern District of New York, okay? They've got a 99.7, like a 99.8% conviction rate, okay? They don't lose, okay? And the reason why they don't lose is because they don't make silly errors like this, right? I think the dude, honestly, man, I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised if Diddy's team did this. I would not be surprised if they paid a corrections officer or an investigator to go in there and illegally take pictures, put it on some hard drive, send it to the prosecution like on the sly, and pretend, okay, well, this is going to be investigator one. Oh, did they take the bait? Great. Now we're going to move to get the case dismissed. I just don't see them making silly errors like this. This is a mistake, guys. This is not an error of law, which is what appeals are based on, but this is an error in strategy. It just doesn't make any sense.
The prosecutor said, I understand there's a dialogue between the defense and the filter team. I'm not part of that. The judge says, I don't understand that dividing line between the covert investigation and discovery in this case, given that the defendant has been charged. The prosecutor also said, our grand jury investigation is ongoing into conduct that has not currently been charged. We have multiple ways to get information that are not obvious to the defendant. We are not obliged to inform them. They have no authority for that.
Wow.
Safa.
Here's the thing. They can have an ongoing investigation all they want to, but Mr. Combs has already been indicted, and post-indictment now, and as we head through the stages of the proceeding, there are documents that they are generating themselves that...
I like this. All Day Day says, I thought you said you quit YouTube. Never ever said that I quit YouTube. Get your facts straight. Get your facts straight.
Discovery and are required to be disclosed. They also are what we in the law call Brady material. Could possibly be exculpatory in nature, or are things that the defense team is going to want to investigate themselves.
Meaning evidence that would show he's not guilty.
Right. Yeah.
Correct. And Brady versus Maryland, it's one of our big cases in the legal world. And so essentially what the government is doing is continuing to now make discovery, in my opinion, as the case is progressing. They may be considering other charges, maybe witness tampering or whatever they determine to do, and that's fine. But again, they have muddied the waters, to use your words. And here we are now where they've created additional discovery, additional things that are required to be disclosed, but they want to keep it close to their chest. It's not okay.
Okay, well, you tell me if this is okay, Mauricio. The judge said, I want to be cautious since some of this is sealed, but is any of this privileged? And the prosecutor said, the notebook was labeled things to do, not attorney-client. They suggest they were meant to be in the folder marked legal, but self-labeling is not enough.
Ooh.
Things to do when you're indicted and sitting in jail, it's pretty assumes that things to do have to do with your case. I mean, that's pretty much
fair?
the main.
Is that fair? Maybe it's, I don't know, do 1,000 crunches today.
But nobody's going to write that down.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to write that down.
Yeah, but I'm sure that in that notebook, things to do, and you have this looming indictment, is going to include some things that have to do with your legal defense, and it's not okay to just go in there and start photographing things and trying to get an upper hand. At the end of the day, I mean, they have a pretty strong case. I don't understand from my perspective.
Right.
And this whole thing smells like a superseding indictment. People like his son, the feds love to indict your relatives. So if they got Diddy's son doing inappropriate things, that for them is they love it, because nothing is worse when you're sitting in prison than all of a sudden they indict your son or a relative or a close friend.
I mean, there was an allegation put forward in the most recent bail application, the bail motion by the government, Safa, where they basically say Sean Combs is having his family doing his bidding for him. So if it's clear there's a grand jury investigation going on. It seems more likely than not there could be more charges leveled against Sean Combs, but possibly others, right?
Of course.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the way that the government is trying to, of course, frame it. I think one of the important things here.
Clay Williams says, so Don, what do you predict moving forward regarding Diddy? Yeah, I think the judge is going to give the prosecution a slap on the wrist. She's going to give them a stern warning. I think he's denied bail, and I think he's found guilty. This is open and shut.
What everybody is kind of on edge about is the possibility of witness tampering.
Yep.
And so whether it's Mr. Combs or anybody that's close to him, including his family and his children, really have to be mindful of what they are putting forth to the public, who they're speaking and communicating to, and things of that nature to avoid any subsequent charges that could come about. That's one thing. The other thing I'm going to say is, and I think that the government alleged in the bail application or in the opposition that Mr. Combs' son was using social media to allegedly taint the jury. And one of the things we have to remember is that although a defendant's been charged and they're incarcerated, it doesn't stop the real world and life from going on.
That's right.
If a family wants to celebrate their birthday or their loved one's birthday, they should be able to do that. Mr. Combs, of course, is a high-profile individual who's got tons of followers on social media. And there are people that still do, believe in him and enjoy his music and all of those sorts of things.
Yeah, believing in him and enjoying his music, those are two very different things, okay? Michael Jackson was a pedophile, guys, but he's still one of the greatest recording artists of all time. Sometimes you got to separate the act. Sometimes you got to separate the art from the artist. Matter of fact, you have to do that a lot.
And so what I'm plainly saying is that Mr. Combs shouldn't be robbed of the ability, or his family shouldn't be robbed of the ability to celebrate him in whatever way.
Yeah, sure. Do what you got to do.
I always found that to be a little bit of a stretch, that argument. Well, he's posting birthday videos. His son has taken over his Instagram and is posting messages about, posts about his rap career and music videos. I think that in and of itself might be a little tenuous to say, oh, that's going to influence a future jury. We don't even know who the jury is. It's not like trials tomorrow. But also, he might have a right to change the public narrative about him nonetheless. He's a public figure. That one always felt a little rough around the edges. There would be a different allegation where they were saying that, and this is something that I thought was really interesting, is the prosecution essentially identified one of the key witnesses in this case and made the allegation that Sean Combs had pressured her to make a public post. This was before his arrest, that basically said one of the allegations in one of the lawsuits was false. So that would be a little bit different. Okay, I have another update from court. This is from the prosecutor. I think, again, talking about what these materials are or what was seen. These include action. So again, I think this is about things to do, Mauricio. I'll throw it back to you. Mm-hmm. Prosecutor says these include action items for non-lawyers. That's not privileged. Their information about family members' birthdays, also not privileged. We point to the mere decision by Judge Rakoff. We are happy to engage with the defense. What are they talking about?
I mean, it seems to me that they're talking about whether or not the actual information is privileged or not. They cite case law.
Yeah.
The problem is that most people, including lawyers that do this for a living, have never seen this type of behavior. Like they're going out on a limb for everybody, the legal community, the community at large, and the public is looking at them saying, really, guys? You guys are in there photographing,
it just doesn't make sense, man.
Envelope that says legal on it. You're going through his legal pads. So the prosecution can cite whatever case they want. At the end of the day, the public is going to think whatever they want. And as of
the public is going to think whatever they here. Listen. Two things can be true here, gentlemen. And this is a lot of people, you know, when they know that they've lost the debate, they use the two things can be true argument to try to hedge. But it's not going to matter to the public. It's just not going to matter. Okay? The public already thinks he's guilty. The public already thinks he's guilty, dude. They already think he's guilty. Okay, so the prosecution got up to some shenanigans. That's not going to change the public perception. It's just not going to change. Most people believe that he is guilty, including myself. So yeah, this might be a PR nightmare and it might look bad, but guess what? That doesn't mean their case is any weaker.
Right now, it looks like if they're really, trying to find evidence that they need, it makes them look like needy, which I don't even think that they are needy.
No.
I think they have plenty of evidence.
Right.
But they're greedy. They want more. They always want more.
Yeah, well.
And I've always predicted that at some point, I know Diddy's was active in politically. I think they're going to go after some of his political friends.
I don't know. It's always the next. Who are they going to go after next? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, talking about looking ahead, there's a mention of the bail argument on Friday. So latest update from court right now. The judge said, how about agreeing that I should not consider these two excerpts in your opposition to the bail motion? And the prosecutor says, I think that's right for the bail argument scheduled for Friday.
Hold on.
The judge said, what about putting them in a vault? That's right.
Hold up. Wait a minute.
Now. The judge said, how about agreeing that I should not consider these two excerpts in your opposition to the bail motion? And the prosecutor says, I think that's right for the bail argument scheduled for Friday. Mm-hmm. The judge said, what about putting them in a vault? They are inspirational messages. Kind of hard to talk about what they're referring to, but it seems to me at the very least, Safa, that there might be parts of the bail motion that I mentioned that the prosecution can no longer argue for Friday,
That's
maybe?
weird.
Yeah, so I think there's an allegation that's been made by the defense here that whatever information had been obtained by the Bureau of Prisons and was ultimately turned over to the U.S. Attorney's Office was used at some point during some bail application. Which one, I don't know. So I think what the judge is essentially saying here is in preparation for tomorrow's bail application, which they possibly have filed their papers in advance of that, request in opposition and the prosecution's opposition to the defense bail application, that some of the information that was obtained through the search and was used in that application will be kept out or stricken. So the judge will basically instruct himself, well, I'm not going to consider these things. We're going to act as if they don't exist.
All right,
Maybe
fine.
It's about that whole
and if they act like it doesn't exist, cool. Life goes on.
section about the birthday messages. Maybe the judge is saying you can't use that stuff anymore in support of your opposition to bail. I'll tell you what, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we have a lot more to talk about. I think I have to sign off my guests. I have to sign up my guests. It was great having both criminal defense attorneys, Safa Robinson-Ferrer and Mauricio Padilla. Look, you guys are fantastic, but both criminal defense attorneys, I saw a little bias here.
Yeah.
I saw a little bias here, but it's okay. You both were terrific. Thank you so much for
Hey,
coming
man,
on.
that's what they
Really
do.
Appreciate
That's
it.
what they
We'll
do.
take a quick break. We'll come back right after this. Stay with us, everybody.
That was funny.
Thank you so much.
He's like, saw a little bias here. All right, so we will hang around. Yeah, this oh, actually no, we're not going to hang around because they're taking a break. We can we're not live right now. There we are.
Client privilege.
Cool. This is why. This is actually why I like doing it this way.
All right, welcome back, everybody. I'm Jesse Weber. We have a special live coverage right now of the Sean Diddy Combs case because what is happening right now is there was an unexpected hearing that was planned for today. It was announced yesterday, where Sean Combs' defense attorneys are accusing the government of violating.
CDL with the $10 super chat says, "I need those Megan the Butthole Stallion tapes to get released for research purposes."
The attorney-client privilege, violating his constitutional rights, saying that there was an improper seizure of materials taken from his jail cell during this pre-planned, although the defense says that it was really done for the pretext, but this pre-planned sweep of the Metropolitan Detention Center where he's currently being housed. And the question is, were there materials that were improperly photographed or taken or seen? Was it put through a proper filter team? Why does the prosecution have this now? Is this a violation of Sean Combs' rights? What could be the repercussions for it? We heard earlier this defense counsel telling the Judge Arun Subramanian, they want the indictment dismissed. They want it thrown out. There could be a potential violation for this.
Yeah, we
Now,
knew
I want
it.
to give you some updates from court because a couple of things. One, no cameras in court, but we are providing you updates about what's happening there. We have live reporting. Speaking of which, our very own Elizabeth Milner is going to be coming out of that courtroom. She's in that courtroom right now. She's going to be coming out and giving us a live report about what she observed in that courtroom. This is a live shot about what's happening outside the courthouse. But let me tell you a little bit more about this as the judge is weighing about, were there privileged communications? Was there attorney work product that was improperly seized or photographed? So these are a couple of updates. Judge Subramanian says, what if an individual had counsel paid by another? The prosecutor in this case said the payment, not privileged. And if it's about paying off a witness, that is what we are investigating. These notes refer to individual 2, a non-lawyer third party. It's on his to-do list.
Paying off a witness. Here we
go. Was one of these papers or these folders that was found in his jail cell. And remember, this ties into the defense's, ties into the prosecution's argument that Sean Combs should be denied bail. That there's going to be a hearing on that on Friday.
Guys, I'm telling you right now, if they give Diddy bail, he is gone. He is leaving. He is fleeing the country. He's out. I want you guys, Samuel L. Jackson, the first time I ever saw Christian Bale was in the movie Shaft. I think it was back in like 2000, 2001, right? Christian Bale's character took a the velvet rope. He took one of those posts and he kills Mekhi Phifer's character, just cracks him over the head and just kills him. Just like that, right? So there's a scene where Bale's character is talking to his lawyer. He's like, okay, well, we got you bail, we got you bond, but so what do you want to do? And so Christian Bale's character is like, well, what should I do? He's like, I don't know, maybe you should go on, on a vacation in the Swiss Alps and maybe stay on vacation. That was his lawyer telling him to flee the country because his lawyer knew that he was guilty as homemade sin. Okay? Mark Agnifilio knows Diddy is guilty. And I think that if Diddy gets out of jail, if he gets bail, he is 1,000% going to disappear. There is no doubt about that. There is no way. Because if I were Diddy, that's what I would do. That's what I would do if I were Diddy. This dude has no shot to win this case. This dude is 644% guilty, and everybody knows it. Everybody knows it. We're just pretending. This whole due process thing is definitely important. Due process is most certainly important. That's how the country runs. But I don't think it's any more obvious that he's guilty. And if they give him bond, he is out of there.
Accusations is that even behind bars, he has been trying to influence witnesses. He has been improperly communicating with people. He has been having family members and others doing his bidding to influence the case. So moving on, the judge said a defense lawyer can investigate potential witnesses. It would be malpractice not to. If these are about the defense team's preparation for witnesses, isn't it a closer call if it falls into work product? The prosecutor responded, the person tasked is a non-lawyer, meaning there's no privilege there.
Okay.
The prosecutor said on October 18th, the defendant told a family member to work with a non-lawyer to find everything about victim 2. And this non-lawyer, individual 2, is not identified as part of the defense team. Judge responded, what about turning over the surveillance video? The prosecutor in another response said, we are opposed. There is no authority for that. Judge said, I noticed that. Mr. Agnifilo, this is Sean Combs' attorney, they want to work with you to try to resolve this. Agnifilo seems to laugh. And then the judge said, you may not agree, but why not discuss? Agnifilo says, we don't want to give them insight. Agnifilo says, all the legal pads say legal. What the government is saying was searched is just not accurate.
Oh,
the judge said,
now it's he said, he said.
Wait, you're saying the photos taken from pads marked legal. Can you show me? And then Agnifilo apparently walks up and hands Judge Subramanian a notepad. Agnifilo then says, when we visit him in jail, we have lists. Everything in these pads are things we discuss. Trial strategy, who we should speak to undermine a witness's credibility. We discuss everything with Mr. Combs. This is a sweeping racketeering case. I want to bring back in criminal defense attorney Safa Robinson-Frere. She was kind enough to stay with us. And we're also joined by criminal defense attorney Natalie Whittingham-Burrell. Great to have you both here. Natalie, I'll start with you. As you heard a little bit about the updates here, what do you make of this?
Yo, these two might be former criminal defense attorneys, but they're like, yo, we need to lock this nigga up. These are black women.
Did the government engage in wrongdoing?
So I think I would personally...
Natalie, I can't hear you. I don't know if we're working on the audio. I don't know if you're muted. I'm trying to work it.
Not muted.
There we go. There you go. Hey, now we can hear you, Natalie.
Well, I am of the opinion that I would need to see the work product itself, or the materials to see. But certainly here, the prosecution did not take, I think, the necessary steps to safeguard attorney work product communication information, because even if they've given it to this so-called clean team, they have seen it. The police have seen it. And so there is a possibility here that they did violate his right to attorney-client communication and privilege. It's very, very possible, depending on what was in.
I think they did. They have violated his rights
in those materials, and things that are marked attorney-client, work product are clearly attorney-client work product, and they should not be looking at it.
And Natalie, let me follow up with that, because Mark Agnifilo just said, we are studying this man's life for our bail application, his charity work. This is not a single day, a single event case. We spend time on every nook and cranny of this man's life. It seems to me they're saying...
Yeah, every nook and cranny, all right.
You should consider, government, everything that's in his jail cell as part of his criminal case. You don't have a right to see it. Am I understanding that correctly, Natalie?
That might be what they're saying, but it's a bit more restrained than that as far as the federal rules are concerned. And yes, for the bail application, his life is very important. However, conversations with third parties, with individuals that are not a part of the defense team, do not fall under attorney-client work product, nor is it necessarily attorney-client work product. Not that the prosecution is alleging this, but for the attorney to assist the defendant in committing some type of crime.
There we go. There it is. See that? See that, man? Dude, I cannot see. I think the prosecution's mistake, if this was a trap set up by the defense, I think the prosecution's mistake was taking the bait. I think that I cannot for the life of me think about a prosecutor who actually thought he was going to get away with this. Like, did you really think you were going to get this information and be able to use it without the defense having a problem with it? It just doesn't make sense to me.
If they could allege that, Sean P. Diddy Combs is trying to obstruct justice and he's using his attorney's communication in order to do that, that's no longer privileged communication, because we cannot participate as attorneys in criminal activity. But let's say that that's not what the material is, and it goes to his case, then yes, that is privileged material, and they have no business looking at it in any regard. They have no right to look at it.
Safa, another update from court. Combs' attorney said, Mr. Combs comes out and reads us his to-do list. That is privileged. The 19 pages include things we have said to him. These are the notes that were allegedly taken by the government. The name of a potential witness, a retired doctor, now they have that. This is the heart of attorney-client. Safa.
Absolutely, and I agree with them. And to my point I said earlier was, at the end of the day, who is in the best position to determine what is attorney-client privilege or what is attorney-client work product? The prosecution isn't. It's up to the defense to say, these are our witnesses, these are the avenues that we are exploring, and that's up to us for our defense case. So the prosecution isn't in the position to tell us or to tell his defense team what is privileged and what is not. And if anything, have the hearing on the issue and let the judge make the determination.
It's interesting because Natalie, and by the way, if anybody has any questions about this hearing, has questions about the overall case, submit them on YouTube. We'll answer them for you on air. Natalie, it seems the defense is saying, particularly when it comes to this search of the Metropolitan Detention Center where Combs is being housed, that this sweep, this raid that was pre-planned and it was looking for contraband, and they found homemade weapons, they found drugs, they found all these different things, electronic devices. It seems what the defense is suggesting, and this is a pretext to really search what was in Sean Combs' jail cell. You think that's a little of an extreme position?
Yes.
It's not extreme at all.
Oh.
I think it actually is a pretext to search his jail cell because there's allegations before he was incarcerated that he was tampering with witnesses.
You go.
Of course, they're going to look and go see whether or not he's still tampering with witnesses.
Yeah, of course.
That's not far afield to me at all. What ultimately matters, though, is that it doesn't matter if it's a pretext, because no person incarcerated has a Fourth Amendment right to privacy that you would have in your own home. You just don't have that right. However, the attorney-client privilege communication, that is sacrosanct and that is protected. Right. So if they use this pretext in order to get into attorney-client communications purposefully and did not take the necessary safeguards, then they've committed a massive ethical violation. But as far as whether or not they need a reason, there doesn't need to be a pretext, because they don't need a reason to search his cell, because he has no expectation of privacy in his cell.
Interesting. So, Safa, let me go to you with this. We have a question from Benoit on YouTube. I'm wrestling with this as well as what we can expect by the end of the day, but the question is from Benoit on YouTube, is it possible the judge makes a move today with this situation? It's kind of like, I'm debating with it because it seems like the judge and the defense are saying we need more information. It also seems like he's saying, defense counsel, can't you work with the prosecution on this? Do you think we're going to get a decision on this today?
That's a good question.
We may not get a decision on this today. The judge at this point in time is exploring, what actually happened, what remedies are available to him to rectify this situation. And so we could get a decision today. He may reserve on that decision. We just don't know.
And what would that decision be?
Oh, good question.
Whether or not what's included in those documents is a breach of that attorney-client privilege and relationship, and if so, what sanctions will the judge impose?
There you go. That's it.
And that leads me to the next question we have, Natalie. This is from Kwang Lee on YouTube. There's absolutely no way Diddy gets a dismissal due to this screw-up, right?
Prepare yourself, guys. So it just depends on the facts of the case, and the court will likely do a good faith analysis, meaning was the prosecution intentionally attempting to intercept attorney-client privilege communications, or were they genuinely looking for contraband and just happened to come across these things?
No,
right?
they knew what they were doing.
Were they just doing a search, hoping to find evidence of witness tampering and not anticipating finding so much attorney-client communications? But I want to be extremely clear here. Dismissal of a case for interception and misuse of attorney-client privilege communications is a rare remedy, but it is an available remedy. It can happen. Not saying it's going to happen here, but I'm saying that this is extremely serious, needs to be investigated further, and that is a potential thing that could happen, that the case gets dismissed.
Well,
Can I ask you about that? You mean a case could get dismissed where the judge says, prosecution, I can't believe you did this. You tainted this entire case. It shows what you're about. Dismissed. Almost, by the way, like happened with the Alec Baldwin case. But is it that, or is it another in the examples that you've seen in the past, where because of an attorney-client breach, or because
attention span says which could be grounds for disbarment if they have anything in plain text saying illegal to saying execute an illegal search, the New York Bar Ethics Board would be the decision makers.
Because of a violation of a defendant's constitutional rights, a key piece of evidence can no longer come in, and then the whole case falls apart. Because I think the problem with the second one is, even if the government can't use anything that they found, it doesn't affect the racketeering charge.
Exactly, which is why it just doesn't make sense that they would make this mistake.
The sex trafficking charge.
Yes, like they've got him dead to rights.
Prostitution charge. So it seems like what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, that because this would be such an egregious error, the judge would say, this taints the whole case? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
So here's the thing. That is a potential outcome. Another potential outcome is a piecemeal redaction of whatever it is that they intercepted. But we have to remember this. Under the Sixth Amendment, he has a right. Every defendant has a right to communicate with their attorney, to vigorous defense. And that is a due process right.
Yeah.
It's the way that you receive a fair trial.
That's
The
what the
prosecution
Constitution
can so much interfere in that right by intercepting those communications where they shouldn't even be seeing them, that he no longer gets a fair trial because of how deeply they got into his case. I'm not saying that's what's happening here, but that's why I said it's a rare remedy, but it does happen that you have so far infringed on his right that it's impossible for him to receive a fair trial. It doesn't even necessarily matter the value of the.
It doesn't. But see, no. With or without this, with or without this, I don't think anyone, dude. I'm telling you right now, no one's mindset has changed with this new revelation. Okay, this hasn't potentially tainted. Okay, so they did an illegal search and seizure and found out that he was trying to bribe witnesses, pay off witnesses, and intimidate, jurors or whatever the case may be. We already knew, like she said, we already knew that he was doing that before they even got a hold of this paperwork, before they even got a hold of the legal pad. That's what he was doing. He was doing that anyway. So it's not like they just randomly decided to make this stick.
The evidence. And that's why the courts will get into an analysis of whether or not this was something that was intentionally done by the prosecution, that for a strategic advantage, versus something that was done maybe accidentally or negligently.
Sure.
Listen. At best, they're incompetent. At worst, they're complicit. Okay? If they're incompetent, hit them with the sanctions. If they were complicit, then you got to disbar them. You got to throw them off the case and give it to somebody else. But to dismiss this case because of that would be a gross miscarriage of justice.
I understand that, yeah, and I think that's a good distinction to make. Safa, we have an update from court. I want to read everybody. The judge says, I'm looking at the case you cited, Ms. Slavic. This is the prosecutor. Are you familiar with it? AUSA Slavic says, I'm not, Your Honor. And then Sean Combs' lawyer, Mark Agnifilo, says, Ms. Garagos has something to say. That's another one of Sean Combs' attorneys. And then Attorney Garagos says, they say there's a covert grand jury investigation, but there's the current indictment. From there, prosecutor says, we're talking here about 11 pages of notes, not a stack. None of those notes are legal. The judge says the notes themselves are not legal, but that page was in a legal pad that was marked legal. Prosecutor says it's not clear when defendant wrote that on.
Oh boy.
What do you take away from
bad.
that?
That's bad.
It doesn't matter. No. At the end of the day, these notes were located on a legal pad, not a regular notebook, but a legal pad. And I believe it was located inside of a folder that was also marked with clear lettering, legal. As a result of it, it should have been treated as such. How they even got to those additional pages is a question. How do we get there when this is clearly something that could be work product, attorney-client product, or...
King Life says, if they got to throw the prosecution off, if I'm Diddy's team, I'm going to use any type of violations found to get my client at least bail and house arrest. Yeah. I mean, look, if I were the defense... Dude, if I'm Diddy's defense attorney, I'm blowing this whole thing up. I'm like, my client has been violated, blah, 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 blah. Look, if you're not going to dismiss the case, at least get us bail. That would be a sound strategy. And if we think that's a sound strategy, I can guarantee you that that's probably what they're in there doing now.
Communication. Right. And are you just going to dismiss the first page and then go to the next ones and assume that it's not? I can't make sense of that.
You can, I want to read you a question from one of our viewers, Natalie. It's from Dougie Jones on YouTube.
Dougie Jones.
What is more important, the crimes Diddy is accused of or taking pictures of pieces of paper?
Ooh. What is more important is everyone's constitutional rights.
Yep, there it is. Look. See, this guy's right here. This question right here, this is the difference between the court of law and the court of public opinion. Listen again.
I want to read you a question from one of our viewers, Natalie. It's from Dougie Jones on YouTube. What is more important, the crimes Diddy is accused of or taking pictures of pieces of paper?
Thank you. There you go.
What is more important is everyone's constitutional rights. So the thing that I tell everyone is that your constitutional rights were built on the back of bad guys. Miranda was someone who confessed to a crime, right? He did it. He confessed to it. But we all now have Miranda rights because he wasn't properly advised that he didn't have to under the Sixth and the Fifth Amendment, right? We have the right to walk away from police officers when they stop us and frisk us. We don't have to stay there and be stopped and frisked. You have Terry to thank for that. Your right to have an attorney free of charge. If you can't afford one, you can thank Mr. Gideon for that. He was a bad guy. He was convicted of crimes. Sean P. Diddy Combs might be an allegedly bad guy.
He is.
But if you don't uphold everyone's right to counsel off of the back of these bad people, you don't get your rights. So later on, if you are alleged to have done something that you didn't actually do, and then the police or the state is able to go in and look at your letter.
Yeah, this is why this is due process. This is why there's due process. Due process is designed to protect the innocent.
Back and forth to your attorney and use them against you, then you would have lost your rights because of a case like this. That's why this is more important than that.
Very, very
She
well
said that's why this is more important than that.
said. And let me just add one more thing, particularly in high-profile cases, particularly where you have defendants who are accused of egregious conduct.
And by the way, like we all know the prosecution has fucked up. We get it. Just because the prosecution fucked up does not mean that Diddy is not guilty. Let's just get that right. Let's get that right. I know we're trying to be objective and look at this from both sides, but let's keep it real. Let's keep it real. Let's keep it real, okay? We all know that he is guilty. We all know that he is absolutely guilty. Did the prosecution fuck up? Yep, sure did. Were they complicit? Maybe, maybe not. Doesn't matter. Who cares? They made a major fuck up. Okay? Yeah, they fucked this up, but that does not mean that Diddy is not guilty. Sorry. Just because your rights were violated doesn't mean that you're innocent. I'm sorry.
I will say it's important in every case, but for those who believe that he's automatically guilty, for those who believe it's just we have to go through the pro forma of a trial, the last thing that you want is a criminal defendant's rights to be violated in some way pre-trial. Right. Because, and correct me if I'm wrong, what could happen is
a dismissal.
They get convicted. They have grounds for appeal. This conviction gets overturned. You got to start the whole process again. It's not even necessary you have a second trial. It won't be as strong as the first time around. So anybody who really wants justice in this case, who already thinks that Sean Combs is guilty, just keep that in mind. Now, I want to actually go to you, Natalie. One more thing. We have an update from court. This looks like we have now a timetable. So the judge says we have a bail hearing on Friday at which I will not consider these materials. In terms of running down the privilege issues, that can take weeks. Any issue with that time frame? Sean Combs' lawyer says no. The judge says I'll issue a schedule. Sean Combs' lawyer says if they are intending to seek a superseding indictment with these notes, the judge asks the prosecutor, and the prosecutor says, just to be clear, the filter team can keep the notes. The judge says if they're not involved in the grand jury investigation or this case. Multiple points there, Natalie. You talk about what you want to hit first.
King Life, it sounds like you either think Diddy is innocent or you want him to be found not guilty. What say you?
Yeah, so first of all, off the bat.
And look, everybody has a right to their opinion, you know what I mean? I mean, listen, there are some very bad people who have done some very bad things who I'm like, yeah, okay, he or she did X, Y, and Z, but, like, I get it.
I can't tell the judge's tone of voice, but immediately there's a sanction on the prosecution. And that is the prosecution is seeking to oppose Sean P. Diddy Combs' release from jail because of alleged witness tampering.
Yeah.
However, they got to that witness tampering by intercepting attorney-client privilege. So they cannot use it. So that
listen, now that I agree with. I think the judge should absolutely positively I wouldn't even redact anything. If I'm the judge, I tell the prosecution, hey, we're not using none of that stuff. Like what you just illegally obtained, we're throwing that out. You can't use it. Because and the reason why is because she has to know that they don't need it. They don't need it.
That is basically a ruling that, at least for that bit of information, it's a possibility that that was attorney-client.
And yeah, King Life, you're right. King Life, you are now you are absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Because if I'm Mark Agnifilio and Diddy gets convicted, the first thing I'm doing is I'm going to appeal. Now, you guys have to understand that I think a lot of people think that an appeal means the prosecution just messed up or this person did this. No. An appeal is if the prosecution can find an error of law. In other words, if the jurors, the judge, the prosecution, how can I explain this? Oh my God. I'll just let her keep talking. If I can figure out how to explain this, but yeah, it has to be an error of law. It can't be like, okay, well, I'm going to appeal because I didn't do it. No, in order to win an appeal, you have to prove that there was an error of law. You have to prove that there's an error of law.
Privilege. They didn't take the necessary.
What? What happened? The fuck? Why'd they take the video down? Oh man, look at that, dude. Yo, that is crazy. They just deleted the video. Oh my God. Well, dude, would you look at that? Would you look at that? I wonder why they would do that. Why would they do that? Why would YouTube or why would law? No, I refreshed it. No, the video is it says this video is private. Why did they make the video private? Diabolical Man says a weakness in law. No, an error. No, I'll actually look that up for you because there's probably somebody who can explain it better than me. Let me just type in grounds for. Actually, I'll just do it here. Grounds for appeal. Grounds for appeal. 5 common grounds to appeal a criminal case. What is grounds for appeal? Okay, let's take a look at this. Hey. What the hell? Get this shit off my goddamn screen. God damn, man. All right. Okay, so sorry, y'all. I didn't see y'all there we go. All right, check it out.
Understanding grounds for appeal in legal English. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to.
Sorry, I don't listen to AI voices. I'm not the type that listens to AI content. Sorry. Grounds for appeal, solicitors. Oh, grounds for appeal in United States court. We're not talking maritime law. In United States criminal court. Be a little bit more. Okay. All right, so here we go.
I want to talk today about grounds for appealing a criminal conviction.
There we go.
Now, people call me all the time and they say, the judge was biased, the DA was corrupt, and the jury made a horrible decision. They really didn't have a good case.
Right.
Well, that's not enough by itself to form the basis for an appeal.
There you go.
To appeal successfully, you have to be...
And again, he said appeal successfully, right? So you can appeal all you want to. You can appeal all you want to, but just because you have an appeal does not mean they are going to... that doesn't mean they're going to do joint... just because you file a motion to appeal does not mean they have to grant your appeal.
Be able to demonstrate more than that. You have to be able to show that there were some legal errors.
There it is.
That occurred
an error of law
trial that prevented the person from getting a fair trial. So I'm going to talk about the...
Oh, well, that sounds... Well, if it affects his ability to get a fair trial, then yeah.
5 most common grounds for appeal. The first is improper admission of evidence.
There's one.
If the judge allows the prosecutor to bring in hearsay or to talk about the defendant's prior record, or allows in or...
And that's not what happened here, because the judge has already said that is going to be stricken from the record. So the judge is not going to allow what they found in Diddy's jail cell at trial or the bail hearing. So you can't use that.
It's evidence that should be inadmissible. That would be a potential grounds for appeal. The second most common grounds for appeal is prosecutorial misconduct.
There you go. Prosecutorial misconduct. There it is. There it is, y'all. That's it. This, I think, falls under prosecutorial misconduct. I think this directly falls under that.
The DA does something underhanded.
Yep.
Now, prosecutors are part of law enforcement. They're supposed to uphold justice, but they do things that are below board all the time.
Yes.
Such as commenting on inadmissible evidence or purposely misstating the law or evidence. A third common ground for appeal is ineffective assistance of counsel. That's when we say that the defense attorney did a bad job that falls below the standard of competence.
And you know what? The Mike Tyson case, Mike Tyson should absolutely have appealed. Because what a lot of people don't know in the Mike Tyson case from back in the 90s, he had a tax attorney representing him. That right there is grounds for an appeal.
That is expected. So, for example, maybe there's an alibi witness that could be very crucial to the defense, but he doesn't call that person to the stand. The fourth common grounds for appeal is jury misconduct. And I'll give you an example. During a trial, the judge tells the jury all the time, do not discuss the case amongst yourselves and do not form an opinion about the case until all the evidence is presented, the arguments are made, and it's submitted to you at the end of the trial. But let's say the jury convicts the defendant and afterwards it comes to light that in fact every day the jury was talking about the case in the lunchroom and that some of the jurors had decided, oh, I think he's guilty on even the second day of trial.
Ooh.
In a situation like that, we may be able to effectively appeal the conviction based on jury misconduct. And a fifth common ground for appeals is insufficient evidence.
Yeah, that's definitely
This is when a jury returns a guilty verdict, but there has not been compelling evidence to support that conviction.
Andrew Tate, anybody?
Here at Schaus Law Group, it's our job to study the trial record with a fine-tooth comb, to identify issues like this that would support an appeal, to present them.
Well, there you have it. There you have it. There you have it. The prosecution, gentlemen, the prosecution may very well, if the prosecution, let's just say Diddy is convicted, okay? If Diddy is convicted in light of if the trial is allowed to go on, the prosecution may have won the battle, but eventually Diddy's going to win the war. Because if they can prove prosecutorial misconduct here, even if the trial goes on, that sounds like it's that sounds like it's grounds for dismissal. Aaron3319 says you didn't hear. Yes, I did hear. I was actually going to come on and talk about the Andrew Tate case, but then I saw that Law and Crime was coming up. As a matter of fact, I'll prove it to you right now. I'll prove it to you right now. This is what I was going to do. This is the thumbnail. This is the thumbnail for the Andrew Tate discussion that I was going to do, or I'm still going to do it. I'm not going to do it now. I'm going to do it. I'll probably do it in an hour. But yeah, I have. Yes, I absolutely know. For sure. So yeah, it really, man, dude, the prosecution may have dropped the ball. I don't think they're going to dismiss the case, but this is very, very strong grounds. This is very strong grounds and I'm not a legal expert, but I mean, from where I'm sitting, just as a layman, someone who doesn't know about the law, based on what that guy told me, it sounds like the defense can successfully appeal this if the jury hands down a conviction. Ice Dragon Kid says, if the judge throws out the tainted evidence, I doubt appeal would be on the table. Oh, that makes sense. Dr. B84 says the camera was shaking, just FYI. Oh, was it? Okay, I didn't see anything. Yeah, man. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what the here's a good question, right? The judge has already said we're going to throw this out. They're going to put it in the vault. No one's ever going to see it. And of course, now here's the thing: if the prosecution mentions any information that references what the inadmissible evidence, dude, that is grounds for appeal. But if she throws this out, which she already has, then how do you appeal? How do you appeal with prosecutorial misconduct if she threw out the evidence that was illegally obtained? You know, I mean, okay, so we know you got it. You put it away. We told you to disregard it. We're going to put it in a vault. Does the defense then have grounds to say, well, look, even though we didn't use it at trial, even though you didn't give my client bail based on these, based on this evidence or lack thereof, the fact that they went in there and did this obviously tainted the jury. Molten Age Gaming says, just tuned in. Are you talking the Tate case or the Diddy case? Right now, I'm talking about the Diddy case. But again, just to be clear, OJ, listen, was OJ, ask me this, I'll ask myself this. Was OJ guilty or was he not guilty? OJ was not guilty. Why was he not guilty? Because he was found not guilty by a jury of his peers, right? But there's not a soul alive who thinks that OJ didn't do it. We know OJ killed Nicole and Ron. We know they did. He was acquitted in court, but everyone know, dude, most people think he did it, man. Most people think he didn't. Most people would bet on it, right? Well, if Diddy gets off on this technicality or on this violation of constitutional right, that doesn't mean that he's not, this doesn't mean that he didn't do it. This doesn't mean that he's not guilty, right? Listen, maybe he's found not guilty, right? But that don't mean he didn't do the shit that he's being accused of. And I want us to keep that in mind. Guys, we're not lawyers, okay? We're not lawyers. We're not attorneys, okay? Or we're not a court. And this is the thing. When formulating your opinion about something, if you have to, and this is just us talking. We're non-lawyers. We're police people, blah, 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 right? We're non-lawyers. We're non-police people. If people are just sitting around formulating their opinions, and, an opinion doesn't really matter in court, especially if we're not there, right? But if you're talking to someone who says, well, I think Diddy's guilty because of X, Y, and Z, if you as a person who is defending Diddy says, well, they did violate his constitutional rights, that does not mean that I don't still think he's guilty. If the prosecution did violate his constitutional rights and he is found not guilty, I'm still going to think that he is guilty. I'm still going to think that he did it, right? I'm not the court of law. I'm not required to find him guilty beyond all reasonable doubt. We're using common sense here, okay? We saw the Cassandra. We saw the Cassandra video. All of these stories are coming out from everywhere. People in the hip hop industry have been talking about this for ages, and now he's finally being indicted, right? So if someone is debating in favor of Diddy, if you're using a legal strategy to do that, then you've already lost. His attorney Mark Agnifilio, he has to do this because he's the lawyer. That's what he's paid to do. I'm not paid to come to a conclusion of guilt beyond all reasonable doubt. No, I'm using common fucking sense here. I'm using common sense, and I don't need a law. I don't need to cite case law or no, man. There's videotapes. There's evidence. There are witnesses. There's victims. There's statements. All this stuff. He's guilty. Well, according to case law, no. This is not the court of law. This is the court of public opinion, right? And cases aren't tried in the court. Now, cases are not tried in the court of public opinion. They're tried in the court of law, which is why they don't want to have the jury pool tainted. All right, guys. Yeah, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to take a break for about an hour. Man, that sucks that they, that really does suck that they cut that video off. And yeah, Ice Dragon Kid said that maybe the judge ordered it to be taken down. I don't know why commentary. I think Law and Crime did it. I don't know why a judge would tell a YouTube channel, hey, take this video down. They're just talking about the facts of the case. All right, guys. I will see you guys I will see you guys at the top of the hour. That's going to be 3 Eastern, 3 Pacific, 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific. We'll talk to you guys soon.